You're listening to a For the Planet production. Doctor Who, Year of the Master, Part 5, An Unlikely Romance. Doctor Who, Year of the Master, Part 5, An Unlikely Romance, written and read by Payne. When you get a message from an enemy, you never know how your meeting is going to turn out. That's how it was for me on the day I received a message from the Master. I wasn't sure which one, but I was determined not to let him or her get the better of me. I decided to answer the call, but proceeded with caution. Oh, forgive me. It is I, the Ultimate Doctor. I will be taking a page out of my predecessor's book and narrating this adventure myself. Anyway, I arrived at the destination requested by the Master, not knowing what to expect. I hadn't consulted Mary or K9 about this. They were somewhere else in the TARDIS, so I decided to slip out, leaving a note on the console for them to see when they got back to the console room. I stepped out of the TARDIS and went outside. To my surprise, I found myself in a rose garden. Rows of roses of all colours on bushes spread widely across the garden. I suspected this was Earth, though it might not be. I walked down a path between some bushes for a minute before I heard a whistle. It came from what looked like a castle next to the garden. I went to have a better look. There was a moat around the castle, which looked very medieval. If this wasn't Earth, it was almost certainly one of those planets that humans from Earth had arrived on and built the landscape to reflect their home. Building a medieval castle wouldn't be the craziest thing to happen. I turned to examine and admire the garden, which was more or less exclusive to roses. Suddenly, a pair of hands covered my eyes and head. Surprised, I yelled and ducked underneath the arms attached to the hands and backed away. I looked back to where the hands had come from. A young woman with a small, sweet, romantic smile popped her head up from where the moat was. She was wearing a very ripped red shirt and blue skirt with damaged yellow heels, which made her look like a castaway on a desert island. "Can I help you, miss?" I asked. "That's Missy to you, darling," she replied. This was the Master, or rather the Mistress, or Missy in this case. Missy smiled seductively at me. What did she want, I wondered to myself, and why here? "Hello," I said. She smiled at me. Then she climbed over the edge of the mound and lay on top of me. What's going on?" I asked. "Shh," she said. "Don't talk, just lie there." She appeared to be cuddling me as we lay on the ground. What's this about?" I asked. She asked. "Oh, basically a few days after my last regeneration, I went to that place you got your ultimate powers and whatnot from, and I stuck my hand in it." "You fool!" I said. "That was very dangerous." "It was," Missy said, "but now I have the same powers as you, Doctor." She smiled. "I can bend the universe to my will and image, if I choose to." "And what is your plan on doing now, then?" I asked. "Why, lover, I wanted to spend some time with you," she said, smiling, admittedly sweetly. "That's nice," I said, but I'm afraid I'm a bit busy." "Oh, doing what?" Missy asked. Suddenly there was a roar and a laser shot over Missy's head, her eyes making a shocked realization face as it did. We looked round to see a platoon of Judoon standing a short distance away. "Fugitive identified," the Judoon captain said. "Step away from the fugitive, Doctor." If you are saying I need to step away, it's not me who needs to step. However, if you meant I'm the fugitive, then I am grateful for Missy stepping away to give me space to surrender. "Missy is the fugitive." "Rats," Missy said as she got off me. I was finally able to get up. "Makes sense," I said as I got up. "Lover, they're only after me because I purposely stuck my hand in the tear to the other universe where the veils of time came from. The Judoon think that's illegal." "It is," the Judoon captain said. "And you also caused the Doctor to get his powers too because of the tear." "Hey, I don't know what the stuff that made him ultimate is. I just used it to make myself ultimate as well," Missy said. "Shouldn't I also be in trouble?" I asked. "No," the Judoon captain said. "You are a victim of circumstance." "Charming," I said. "But the Master is guilty of purposely causing herself to gain these powers and inadvertently giving you yours as well." "Right, well I'm off then," I said. "Bye, Missy." I started to walk off. "Wait for me!" I heard Missy cry from behind me. She was starting to run after me. "Stop!" the Judoon captain shouted. "Oh heck!" I yelled as I ran away from Missy and the Judoon. I hid behind a brick wall. I saw Missy coming. She also climbed over the wall, but, being the idiots that they are, the Judoon ran past. I looked up as they did. Despite trying to get away from her, I couldn't help feel some sort of caring feeling for Missy. Was it because she was my old friend? Or had I started to fall for this new ultimate mistress of sex and romance, as I presumed she was? Missy was lying on the ground looking up at me. Her hands reached up around my neck and pulled me down. "Hey," she said. "Huh?" "Doctor, imagine being like this with me for the rest of our lives." "Ah, now don't get greedy now," I said. "We're only on our, 5th incarnations each?" "But lover, how could you possibly blame me?" she asked. "Yeah, I suppose so," I responded, then smiled. "You're only a Shobogen after all, underneath all that Time Lord pomp and circumstance." But before either of us could make a sexual innuendo out of the words pomp or circumstance, a Judoon with a big mallet tried to whack Missy's head. I managed to pull her up just in time. Position-wise, I was kneeling on the ground whilst her legs were between them. We were in a sitting position as I hung on to her, her eyes once again in a realization surprised expression. We shrieked as we sat up, avoiding the mallet by a second. I then got up and carried Missy in my arms, her own arms wrapped around my neck. "Judoon really don't know how to play," I complained. Suddenly, we were surrounded by Judoon. But being the idiots that they were, they didn't try to shoot us with guns, but instead tried to hit us with bats, hammers, and mallets, or slice us with axes. A whole bunch of them surrounded us and started to hit, chomp, slice, and knock. But none of them got us. I managed to duck past them, and, while still carrying Missy, ran past them into the castle. After going through the front door of the castle and closing it, I desperately needed to take a breather. Missy didn't need to take as much time to take a breather, as she had been carried in almost the whole time. "Thanks," she said as I sat down next to her. "You're welcome, I guess," I said. "Doctor, honestly, I love you," she said. "Well," I said, "I love you too. Not sure how that happened, but I do." And I wasn't lying, and she knew it. And she wasn't lying, and I knew it. We reached in for the kiss. We kissed, and kissed, and kissed. Then we smiled. Then we heard someone cough. We looked around and saw a small little man staring at us, scowling. He was wearing a neat brown suit with a matching tie and shoes. "Oh, it's you two," he said crossly. At the time, I presumed he was the owner of the castle and the estate, and was cross that we were on his land and in his home. "Beg your pardon, sir," I said. "We'll be on our way, pending Judoon presents." "What?" the little man asked. "You think I'm annoyed that you're on my land and in my castle?" I nodded. "No, you stupid idiot," he yelled. "I'm annoyed that it's you two, the Doctor and the Master." "Is this because we're fugitives of the Judoon?" asked Missy. "Oh, we're way past that," the little man said crossly. "And, who are you?" I asked. "Allow me to introduce myself. Doctor, Master," the little man said. "I am usually referred to as Derek." "Derek?" I asked. "Derek," Derek said. "Please don't wear my name out." "So why are you upset with us?" I asked. Derek began to explain. "Well, you see, Doctor, you and your little girlfriend here—" "Who are you calling little?" Missy yelled, annoyed. Derek scowled. "As I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, you two and I have already met sometime in your future, though." "When in our future?" I asked. I shouldn't have. Knowing my future is a dangerous thing to do, even if I forget it when I regenerated. "The one in a flamboyant, colourful blazer jacket and tie hangs around with a gang that includes a samurai." "Ah, spectacular. No wonder you're pissed," I said. Derek continued. "And Missy over here was bananas and wore a big purple dress and hat, and had an umbrella." "That would be the crazy master," Missy said. "Yeah, she's crazy." "Doy!" Derek said sarcastically. "So what did our future selves do to upset you so much?" I asked. "Well," Derek began, but before he could finish, the Judoon burst into the castle. "Fugitives located!" the Judoon captain shouted. "Identified as the Master and the Doctor." "I could guess I am a fugitive for helping the Master," I said, "but I still resent being called a fugitive." "Oh, get used to it," Missy stated bluntly. Suddenly, the Judoon looked towards Derek. "Bigger fugitive identified. Derek," he said. "They found me," Derek said. He then jumped out of a window. "Do not let the fugitive Derek escape," the Judoon captain said. "Doctor and Master are now no longer of concern." "Charming," Missy said. "Judoon will now leave and hunt Derek," the Judoon captain said, and with that the Judoon left the castle, leaving me and the Master alone together. "Well, that was unexpected," I said. Missy nodded. We then looked at each other and smiled. Then we kissed, passionately. Then we had sex. After we had finished having sex, we walked back to Missy's TARDIS, which was disguised as a garden shed. appropriately. But before she went in, she asked if we could go on another date. I said, well, might be a bit difficult for us both, since we're both time and space travellers. I suppose you're right, she said remorsefully. But we will see each other again, right? Almost definitely, I said. But when and where will be a mystery. Heck, I could meet you before you came here. Or maybe you could meet me before I came here. She smiled at me. I think I'd remember if that happened. Yeah, me too, I responded. Then we laughed. Afterwards, she drew me in for a kiss, then stepped inside her TARDIS. Goodbye, lover, she said. For now, my love, I responded. My love? I'd fallen for her charms, I realised to myself as she closed the door and her TARDIS started to dematerialise. I smiled and shrugged it off. Well, if I'm going to be dating the Master, I'm glad it's this Master, I thought as I made it back to my own TARDIS. Upon entering, I noticed a rather ticked-off Mary Fellows, my companion at this point in my life. She scowled at me crossly. And where have you been? She asked, like a nagging wife, mother, or older sister, but not in a humorous way. I went to respond to a message from a frenemy, I said. So I saw, she said, nodding towards the scanner. Ah, I said. Affirmative, replied Canine, who was also there. I'm surprised, disgusted, and angry with you, Mary said. Not only is she your mortal enemy, Mary had met the Master before, though that is a story for another day. How could you fall for her, let alone mate? She stopped being discreet. People change, I said. None more so than Time Lords. Oh, spare me that, she exclaimed, her eyes narrowing. I sighed. Well, I suppose it was because she was honest, I replied. I fell for that and her new personality. Also, the Judoon kind of helped push us together rather than put us apart. And there was that Derek guy too. Oh, whatever! Mary yelled and stormed out of the control room. Out of earshot, Canine said, I think she likes you and is jealous of you being with the Master. Clearly, I responded. Then I walked over to the controls and prepared to set the TARDIS in motion. The TARDIS groaned as I touched the console. Oh, come on, not you too, I shouted at the TARDIS. You've had to get used to me being close to other people, actual physical people, for what, 500 years? Are you really going to behave like this now? The TARDIS groaned louder and angrier. Is this because it's the Master, or have you just had enough? A quieter groan followed my question. She might be jealous of Mary, Canine said. A slightly louder groan sounded through the room. I sighed and pulled the lever down that set us on our way. The TARDIS, Mary Fellows, and the Ultimate Master. All three want me. I suppose that makes me very popular. Still, plenty of time to figure all of that out. Hopefully. The end. Next time, the Fantastic Doctor helps out an old friend when the Saxon Master comes looking for her for revenge. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne audio YouTube channel.